All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got the balance changes for Season 2 2025. It's definitely an interesting one with a lot of green, so we'll be taking a look at it to see whether or not anything changes in the meta. I have not looked at this in depth, but I looked at all the guns that are listed, and I'm not super excited, but maybe reading into it a little bit more will change my mind on that. So drop a like if you guys want to see more on the channel. I'm going to try to get back to uploading more regularly here, and we'll hop into things. First, we got the XM4. Reduced visual recoil, that's probably more part of the Mythic rework than anything else. And then we have reduced horizontal recoil as well. I didn't feel like it had a ton of horizontal recoil. I feel like most of it's vertical. Then we also have the agency suppressor, which now reduces vertical recoil by 15%. That's pretty substantial upside. Although I think that's the way most agency suppressors work anyway. So that'll be a nice little change. I feel like most people use the agency suppressor. So that'll be a nice quality of life change. We got the HBR A3. Upper arm multiplier from 1 to 1.2 should be interesting. Then the Thunderbolt Sling also gets a horizontal recoil reduction. So depending on how that upper arm multiplier plays out, what that does to the 3-tap consistency, HBR might be feeling kind of nice. M13 lower arm multiplier increase from 1 to 1.06 and chest multiplier from 1.06 to 1.1. M13 was already a super solid option, and that should increase its 4-tap consistency, so that should be feeling nice. M16 stomach multiplier from 1 to 1.1 and hit flinch reduce. It's not something I think is going to make a massive difference, but once again, probably should increase the 3-tap consistency at least a little bit. We got the Bison BSA improvement by a pretty substantial amount. Bison might actually be kind of a solid hybrid option. Obviously, it has that capability of 3-tapping in the close range, especially with the hybrid mag. You can do that relatively consistently. With the BSA getting better, this might become a little bit more viable as well. CBR BSA improved. I think it was already improved one time, although it was only on the max BSA that it was improved, not the opening BSA, so that's not really going to make a whole lot of a difference. ISO arm multiplier increased from 1 to 1.1. I'm assuming that's upper and lower arms, so that should be feeling nice as well, increasing the 4-tap consistency on that. PPSH, hip fire spread improved. I don't think that's really going to be super noticeable if I'm being completely honest with you. CX9 hit flinch reduced from 1.2 to 1.1, and the CX30E increased range and bullet speed buff from 25% to 30%. I don't know if that's the suppressed barrel or if that is just the regular range barrel that I feel like most people use on it. So if it is, that's definitely going to be a solid change as well. Moving on, the only nerf in the entirety of the balance changes is the MG42. It is to the VOD skeletal, which I would say the majority of people do run on it. So increased hip fire spread penalty from 5% to 20%. Obviously, that'll change things a little bit, but for people that use the MG42, I don't think they're doing a whole lot of hip firing, so I don't know if I see that changing things in a meaningful way to drop the MG42 outside of our top 10 guns. The Raw MG headshot multiplier increased from 1.4 to 1.5. I'm assuming that makes it so that it can 2-tap to the head. And while I will say the pattern of making it so that every gun can 2-tap to the head, I don't think is a good one. The Raw MG is one of those that needs it because the mobility and the ADS speed are so absolutely horrendous that it really has no upside outside of its ability to wallbang. So that's actually going to make the gun semi-usable. I think that's a solid change right there. We got the chopper, increased chest multiplier from 1 to 1.17. I'm assuming that's going to help out. They just want everything to be more capable of 3-shotting. That's the takeaway that I'm getting from this. Looks like a complete rework on the choke for the Argus. So increased BSA buff by 8%, increased hipfire buff spread by 2%, increased movement speed penalty. Isn't increased penalty? That should be decreased penalty if it's from 5 to 1%. So they misphrased that, but obviously that's going to help the mobility. And then on the counter side, added a strafe speed penalty, which I don't see having a whole lot of effect, and also added a 5% ADS time. So this is more of like a balancing, not a true buff, not a true nerf, although I do feel like it gets more buff than it does get nerf, so I'm going to count it as a buff. Next up, Kilo Bolt made it ADS a little bit faster. SPR made it ADS a little bit faster. They keep doing this with the marksman. It still hasn't been enough to really substantially change them, and I would say for the time being, the SPR is still a better variation of the Kilo Bolt just because you need to run the stopping power in order to make the Kilo Bolt viable, which inherently makes the ADS speed slower, but I think using the SPR might feel a little bit nicer after the update. We'll have to test out how that feels relative to some of the sniper rifles and their mobilities. And we got operator skills, reduced energy requirement for control field. I didn't feel like control field needed a buff. I feel like there were a decent number of people that if they wanted to use it, were going to use it. Reduced energy required for Sparrow is kind of crazy because that was already, especially as far as competitive goes, one of the meta operators. So that's going to be very interesting to see. And then moving on, we've got the Death Machine, increased damage resistance from 25% to 30%. This might turn into like the Equalizers 2.0. I had honestly forgotten that they made it so that there's additional damage resistance. So 30% reduction is going to feel really nice. And increased all body multipliers to 1.2. I don't know what they were before, but that's actually kind of insane. Okay. I might have to be running Death Machine as my main operator after this. Grav spikes increase radius by 0.5 meters and increase the recharge speed. Dowser grenade got a buff. Here's the thing. If Dowser grenade's buff does not make it so that you can hop up again, nobody's ever going to use it. Because it's just way too niche of a thing to ever be worth it. Increased recharge speed. What do you mean recharge speed? Does it work like restock? I don't know what recharge speed on Dowser Grenade means. I don't know. Echo Grenade optimized throwing animation. Okay. Sam Turret reduced score cost by 60. I mean, it's a good defensive score streak, so I don't hate that. Restock reduced throwable recovery time from 20 seconds to 15 seconds, so restock will be a little bit more viable. And then Overclock increased operator skill charge speed buff by an extra 10%. So that's going to be an interesting change as well. Some noticeable changes to the red perks. Overall, I don't see any of these changing the meta. Bison's definitely one of the ones that I'm more excited to see. And obviously, we'll have to test out and see how the Mythic XM4 feels after the change. But it's not changing the time to kill at the end of the day, so I don't see it having a major impact. HBR buff's going to be nice. M13 buff. There's a bunch of buffs in here that are definitely going to feel nice, but at the end of the day, they're not changing the USS, which is the biggest, like, what the frick are we doing? We're going on Season 3 of the gun's dominance. Even the BP-50, at least in the first couple of seasons, got minor nerfs. Obviously, they weren't enough to knock it out of the #1 spot, but they're at least trying to do something. They're not trying to do anything for the USS, which I just don't understand the reasoning behind. But maybe next season when we get a new gun introduced, they'll finally take it out of the meta. We are supposed to get the ranked overhaul next season as well, so we've got that to look forward to. But let me know you guys' thoughts on the changes in the comments down below. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop a like down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.